Today we have an eminent personality in the medical field with us. Dr. Ambrish Mittal is a well-known endocrinologist in India with over 33 years of experience. His area of expertise is diabetes, thyroid, and hormone disorders. He was honored by the Government of India with the Padma Bhushan in 2015, and he's been awarded Doctor of the Year by the Delhi Medical Association. And he also has his name in the Limca Book of Records for his contribution in the field of medicine. He has also been an official advisor to Healthify Me since 2012. Hello, doctor. Thank you so much for being with us today. There has been a lot of overwhelming news, stats, and information about the link between obesity and COVID-19. We have a few questions for you on the subject so we can all understand this link a little bit more. To start off with, I think it's being said that obesity is a major risk factor for COVID-19. Could you shed some light on this? Does obesity make you more susceptible to COVID-19? How does being obese make recovery from COVID-19 harder? Could you share your thoughts on that, doctor?
Yes, I think we'll divide this into two parts. The first is, are people who are obese, are they at greater risk for developing COVID-19 or contracting COVID-19? And recent data seems to indicate yes, especially from North America, from Johns Hopkins Institute. There is data to clearly show that obesity takes away the protection that is conferred by a younger age. So the protection conferred by youth, that is 30-year-old may think, I'm not going to get COVID-19. Youngsters don't really get it. Young people don't get it. It's only the people over 60 who have to worry. But if you're obese, especially if you're majorly obese, like severely obese, if you have BMIs over 35, for example, which is quite obese, but even with BMIs over 30, you are sort of, in a way, nullifying the advantage that age gave you. And recent analysis shows that in hospitalized patients with COVID across the world, if you find, let's say, 10% are below 50, or in some studies, 15%, 20% are below 50, somewhere in that zone, you will find that a majority of them have comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, etc., which are all driven by obesity. So you have to understand that, yes, being severely obese definitely puts you at greater risk for developing the infection. But even some degree of obesity, like over 30 BMI, which is also at least moderately obese, even that will make will put you at greater risk for contracting the infection. So if we are obese, we do stand a greater chance of contracting the infection. Now, look at it the other way. If you're 65 and obese or 70 and obese, that makes you, that's a double hit. You know, you have age against you. I mean, I'm sure if you're healthy, you'll recover very well, and God bless you for that. But the thing is that the risk conferred by obesity, in addition to your other risks, that will happen at that age, will exponentially increase your risk overall. If you're 65 or 70, you would be having other comorbidities, often like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. And along with that, obesity itself confers the risk for contracting the infection. Let's now move to what happens if you actually get the infection. So is there a difference in the outcomes if you're obese versus if you're not obese? So for example, if there are two people who get the infection, one is not obese or has a BMI of 23, the other person has a BMI of 32, let's say. So and otherwise they are similar, age and everything is similar. So people who are obese tend to have poorer outcomes. Studies from the UK have clearly shown that in different analyses, there is a 33 to 50% greater risk of poor outcomes in people who are obese. Again, a lot of this depends on the degree of obesity, because if you're really obese, if you're above 35 BMI, then the risks are much higher. So the issue, of course, arises as to why is this happening? What's the connection? So basically, there are two broad ways of looking at it. The first is that people with obesity or even overweight have concomitant conditions, as we call them. They're partners in crime. Obesity, as we say, is the mother of all non-communicable disorders. So if you look at diabetes, if you look at hypertension, heart disease, all of which are independent risk factors for poor COVID outcomes, they often go with obesity. In fact, obesity is a starting point for all these conditions very often. So therefore, quite clearly, accompanying conditions with obesity make it harder for people to recover. The other point, which is very important, is that there is a physical issue there also. When obese patients lie down, their diaphragm is in such a position that the oxygenation is not adequate. And there's a physical problem with the oxygen going from the lungs to our bloodstream because we don't get enough oxygen deep down everywhere. And therefore, that not only increases your risk of not recovering well, but basically, if God forbid you have to go for ventilation, as you know, oxygen is the mainstay of treatment in COVID, right? So if to push that oxygen becomes that much harder. So there is a physical process because of which there is difficulty in spreading the oxygen through the system in people who are obese, particularly if they're obese and they are don't have cardiovascular fitness. If they have a fair degree of exercise, that compensates a lot. But if they're not exercising regularly and if their lungs are not expanding regularly, then really it adds to the risk. But it's not only that. It's not just physical. I already told you concomitant conditions, then the physical impact of obesity, right? The sometimes people who are severely obese will also be, for physical reasons, breathless very quickly. And you can't figure out whether this breathlessness is because of just their weight and the way they were, or is it an impact of worsening COVID? And you know that breathlessness is an important indicator of worsening condition in COVID and an indication for hospitalization. We always tell our patients, if you're getting breathless, you call the doctor immediately. Don't wait, don't wait. So that is the other part. But at a more pathogenetic level, obesity is what is called a pro-inflammatory state, which means that there is already some degree of existing inflammation within the body of those who are obese. And that comes because of adipocytes or fat cells releasing certain kinds of chemicals in the body. Now, if you are starting with that pro-inflammatory state, and if we get the inflammatory storm, or as it is called in medical parlance, cytokine storm, that often happens with COVID, when it turns serious, then you already are compromised. So the inflammatory storm or the cytokine storm that happens when COVID starts getting complicated, that is much more severe in people with obesity. So that's the second point. There are other very technical issues, but yes, one is there that I don't know if people might be aware about ACE2. You've read about the ACE2 enzyme, which is present on the cell surface. And ACE2 enzyme is where the receptor hooks on and enters your cell. So think of a cell, and on top of that, something that's sitting there, that's the ACE2, right? And that is where the virus hooks onto. Now, in people who are obese, the fat cells also express ACE2. So it is postulated, but not proven, that the virus may get stuck in their fat cells and then may gradually be released or whatever. This is speculation, but that's another connection. So there are numerous connections as to why obesity makes us more prone to both getting the infection and also poor outcomes from the infection.
All right. Yeah, I think that was very informative, and this deep awareness is important to all of us. So thank you for that. Coming to the next aspect. So when someone is obese, and it also may be coupled with other conditions like diabetes, what can be said about prevention during the COVID season, and also management if they should contract COVID?
Okay, I think that's very important, because the first point we have to understand is that COVID is here to stay. We were all ducking and thinking it'll just pass us over, but it's not going to do that. It'll settle into our community. I mean, no one knows the future, but it's very likely to settle in the community at some sort of more normal level, hopefully over the next 1 year or so, but it's not going to go away. So the precautions for COVID will have to remain in place even when the storm blows over. Okay. Right? So it's not that we're doing it. What can we do if I'm obese and, COVID is spreading now? I can't bring my weight down in 2 days. How does it matter? Forget about it. No, it's not 2 days. You need to protect yourself from COVID forever, but definitely for the next year or maybe 2 years. So therefore, even if you start today, don't get disheartened by the fact that you're obese today and it looks like an insurmountable challenge. You need to get into the act today. And I'll explain that. Even if you lose 5 to 10% of your body weight, you're helping yourself a lot. You don't have to, become absolutely slim and trim like a film star. It's okay if you lose some weight. You can be like the film stars of 60s, not the film stars of 2020. In 60s and 70s, little plump film stars were still considered fashionable and popular. So anyway, so if you lose some weight from where you are, if you're 20 kg overweight from ideal weight, if you can lose 5 kilograms or 8 kilograms, that's a big help. So every kilogram loss helps. Every lowering of HbA1c by even 1, supposing your sugar is really uncontrolled and you're at 10 HbA1c, which is a 3-month average of blood glucose. If you bring it to 8, it's a great thing, even though it couldn't hit 6.5 or 7, right? So it is not absolute. In medicine, it's always relative. So relative to your risk now, if you lose some weight, you will reduce your risk substantially. That's number one. Number two, along with that is the concept of not just losing weight, but losing weight while maintaining fitness. Because if you go on a drastic diet, actually, you will probably reduce your immunity temporarily. So you don't want to go on a drastic diet and not exercise and lose all your muscle mass and then be actually more prone to anything. So we are not recommending drastic dieting at this point. We are recommending healthy diets coupled with the right amount of physical activity and exercise that'll keep us healthy, and not like just going on a 800 calorie diet and suddenly losing 20 kilograms. No, not a great idea. So it is important to keep that in mind. At the same time, if you exercise, you improve your lung capacity. You're improving your lung capacity. If you improve your lung capacity, you're in any case protecting yourself from COVID. So it's a combination, a judicious combination of healthy diets and regular exercise, improvement in parameters, of course, weight, but consequently, definitely in your blood glucose levels, in your blood pressure, all that will respond. It's not there's a different diet for diabetes, different for blood pressure, different for weight. It's all the same.
Right.
So we need to get onto the wagon at this point, so that even if we are a little late, it doesn't matter. We'll at least reach there.
I think that's a very hopeful message. No matter how severe your condition is, there's always scope to start, and there's always scope to start now. And you mentioned diet and exercise, and I think that's a very important intervention to have. But we are also facing this challenge of lockdown and quarantine, maybe not having access to all the healthy foods that one ideally could have access to, and maybe not being able to go to a gym or work out. Do you have any advice or suggestions for how to manage your weight, manage your other conditions during this challenging time?
So I'll start with something very basic, and that is, even if you're working from home, people like us have never worked from home, okay? But even we are partially working from home. It's exceedingly important to maintain a schedule, to still get up on time, get ready on time as if you're going for work. Because if you don't do that, you will find it impossible to stick to eat timings for breakfast or lunch or dinner, and it'll be all over the place. You'll be snacking in between. So you sort of convince yourself, it takes a few days, that you're at work. So what time did you eat, and what time should you eat, and what time, On the other hand, being at home can sometimes regulate this better, because you can insert lunch at the right time into your schedule, for example. So timing is of essence, and routine is of essence. In the initial days of lockdown, people were not sleeping till 4 a.m. seeing movies with the family, and then waking up at 12 and then calling me with their sugars being all over the, I mean, obviously, right? So the basics will remain same. So that is number one. Number two is what to eat. When to eat, I told you, but what to eat is very important. The advantage of a lockdown is that you're eating home cooked food mainly, and that's amazing. Most people are actually eating healthier. At the same time, sometimes when you eat with family and you're in a more relaxed frame of mind, otherwise you could probably be overeating. You could probably overeat and their goodies are all around. So I think that needs disciplining, and there is no other sort of way to do it. Everything may not be available, but healthy choices will be available if you focus on high fiber carbohydrates, if you focus on veggies and fruits, and lean proteins, like not very heavy fat proteins, then you probably will achieve a very healthy diet during this period. The challenge in that is motivation. And the challenge in the diet part is, how do you do that when you're sitting at home? You got so many things to worry about. You're worried about COVID, you're worried about this, you're worried about your business, worried about your job, you're worried about your health, family, elderly people in the family. So I think in that sense, connecting with a coach or someone who can guide you through this period, or even otherwise, through a remote mechanism like an app, can work very well. Nowadays, the technology has made it possible for us to connect with our guides through an app. Like you connect with the doctor, and people are doing virtual consults with us all day. So we are actually advising people uh, most things about their disease only via the internet. So in the same way, if you can connect with your lifestyle coach or guide through an app-based mechanism, that is certainly a structured mechanism. And in my experience, that has worked very well, even regardless of COVID, even without COVID, it has worked very well in keeping people uh, sort of engaged, and people thinking about their disease or their condition, not disease necessarily, about their health, actually, I should say, and without being invasive or intrusive. So there are more refined apps really help us in that. And I think it's amazing how well people have adapted to this new technology. I mean, till 2 months ago, I wasn't seeing anybody on video consults. Now that's what I do all day. So people have changed. They've quickly adapted, and human race is known to adapt itself very quickly. So I think motivation and guidance, there are two challenges in my patients when they're trying to eat healthy. We're not even talking of exercise yet. I'm only talking of diet. The first is that every gym instructor and every person who has done one experiment on themselves becomes an expert. So as a result, what happens is that people are taking advice from unqualified nutritionists. And the basis of that advice is very flimsy, and it's N of one, because I did this and I succeeded, everyone should do this. So everyone is sure. Nutrition is an area where no one knows anything and everyone is sure about everything. So you need to go, you have to make sure that your app or your guide is a trained nutritionist, and the information given is authentic and from National Institute of Nutrition or those kind of sources, the information about Indian food and other foods. Otherwise, everyone is doing their own thing. And people sell very well. So you sometimes can't figure out what is authentic and what is not authentic. There is a whole campaign against people who are not qualified and still doing this stuff. So an app that has a solid basis in terms of its information base, has some people who've helped get that information in place about food, and that has a trained staff, is the kind of app you should opt for. It is very important. Otherwise, all kinds of exciting things keep coming, which don't last more than one season. So I think that's the important. The other part app helps, and people like me, they need help for that, is to help you work out regularly. It's kind of a pressure, and it helps you to emphasize your exercise. It helps you to fix a time for that. And there is someone watching over, watching over you all the time. So I think that kind of structured mechanism works very well. So I do think that sitting at home without really venturing into common areas like the gym or others, you can successfully manage your health, overall improve your fitness, and of course, maybe lose some weight and
Yeah.
reduce your risk of getting COVID or its complications.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect advice given the challenges that we're facing today. And as you mentioned, important elements of that are schedule, what to eat, how to eat, speaking to and informed and getting the right information from the nutritionist that you're working with, right? So I think that's where an app like Healthify Me comes into the picture. Some of the things that our diet plans do, our nutritionists are able to do, is offer you the right calorie deficit, put you on a macronutrient balanced diet, and help you reach your goals in a very sustainable manner. Um, uh, and and if you could just comment to that, that is important during this time, right, doctor? That is something that you would recommend, a more
Yes, of
specific
course.
diet.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, you have to have a diet these days, which helps build your immunity also.
Hmm.
So it's not just you go on a drastic diet. That's what I was mentioning earlier, and just
Yeah,
lose weight. You have to have a diet that's really healthy, and
right.
many of these fad diets are not healthy. So you have to make sure you're getting enough minerals, enough vitamins, micronutrients, macronutrients, and that, as I said, is only possible with an app which is science-based and not fashion-based. So, there's a word called sciencey, which means that you're trying to be very sciencey without really having the science in place. So
Right.
I think it's important that we follow the science and don't challenge everything. Don't believe conspiracy theories. Everyone's telling you wrong stuff. All doctors are sold out. All guidelines are fake. And I know the truth. That's not correct. Follow the science. Actually help people, get their act in place within the domain of health and scientific knowledge, and so that you not only lose weight, attain your goal, but actually are healthier while you do so.
Yeah, as the link between obesity and COVID-19 gets established more and more, I think there may be some room for fear, but I think the way to combating that is to have access to the right information with informative sessions like this, and also using the right resources that are available to you to get in line and start. So that's definitely very helpful. And also just some closing thoughts from you on what is the safest and most advisable way forward beyond COVID-19 season for everyone, people who are struggling with obesity and other conditions, and also just for vigilance, for having some sort of vigilance for all of us. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Yes, we are focusing on COVID these days, and everything is about COVID. But the truth is that if we improve our fitness, reduce our weight to as close to ideal as possible, or at least 5 to 10% of our baseline body weight, if we can shed off, we will not only be helping ourselves during the COVID era, but obviously we'll improve our blood glucose, we'll improve our blood pressure, we reduce our chances of heart disease, we will get less eye disease, less heart disease, less foot problems, less neurological problems. So it's a overall sort of health approach where COVID has come in now, so it's sort of energized people to look at it like that. But the long-term impact of poor control of all these conditions is well known, and which is what
Right.
we're sort of talking about for so many years. So that doesn't go away. So if you think I'm going to start looking after myself right now, I'm going to do nothing, let this storm be over, then I'm going to get into action. That's completely wrong, because the storm firstly will abate to some extent, but won't completely go away. Number one. Number two, this is the time to give to yourself and actually get kick-started on this if you've been lazy or whatever, you've been too busy with your work. And actually have many examples of people who've been very, very busy, but have improved their health tremendously in the last few weeks.
Hmm.
they've lost weight. Yesterday, I got a call from someone lost 8 kilograms in the last 2 months. The sugars are all normal. Everything is feeling good. So it really depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, it certainly is a wake-up call even for me. I think I'm going to immediately after the session go and figure out a way to take my health more seriously as well. This was great. Thank you so much. Lot of takeaways from this session, and certainly a more like motivating and uplifting message to sign off on. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you.